Hello and welcome to the Voice of Liberty podcast. My name is Henry Conley. Always glad to be here with you guys. Tonight, I want to talk about statues. I want to talk about history. And I want to talk about Donald Trump. Geez, here I am again, talking about Trump, talking about statues, and talking about change. But it needs to happen. A little backstory here. 5 days ago, there was a group of people in Lafayette Park in Washington, or Lafayette Square in Washington, D.C., who tried to tear down and vandalized the Andrew Jackson statue that is there. Why Andrew Jackson? Why is there a sudden push towards going after Andrew Jackson? Well, it's pretty simple. Jackson was a part of forcibly relocating thousands of Native Americans during his time as president. He was a slave owner. And he's being honored literally hundreds of feet from the White House. So these protesters, of course, are trying to make change. There are many people trying to get these horrendous statues towards these or honoring these horrendous people removed. I've talked about it multiple times in the last few days worth of shows. But this, of course, has a negative effect on certain people. People who value these statues not because they preserve history, but because they preserve a time that they hearken back to. This got Donald Trump involved. Donald Trump recently signed an executive order setting a jail term and a sentence for any destruction, removal of, or vandalization of a statue, monument, or similar object. These jail terms are 10 years. It's a felony offense. It's pretty horrendous. Donald Trump today decided to tweet out 15 images from the FBI and the National Park Service trying to get more information on 15 individuals who were involved in taking down these statues. Donald Trump is, of course, upset right now, and he's arguing on about it. These statues, Donald Trump is trying to play the standard right-leaning argument that these statues are history. These statues talk and preserve history. They teach it. If history is not taught, it will be bound to repeat itself. So, of course, he argues that this statue for Andrew Jackson must stand. Why must this statue stand, though? It's pretty simple. For Donald Trump, every single statue is a battleground. Every one of these statues, whether it's Andrew Jackson, whether it's the Mount Rushmore, whether it's a Confederate statue, whether it's a honor towards the Confederacy, whether it's the Confederate flag itself, that is a part of the nation's strong heritage in his head. He says this because he gets his supporters riled up. And right now, knowing that he is trailing behind Joe Biden, he knows that he needs to get his supporters riled up in just about any way possible. He knows that pretty much the last remaining base that he has is the Southern base, is the base that wants these statues, that loves the Confederacy, and loves anybody that put their foot on the not white people. So Donald Trump is, of course, going to do everything he can to get these people riled up, because if you think it's about statues, he doesn't give a shit. If you think it's about these monuments, he doesn't care. If you think it's about history, he doesn't care. See, Donald Trump, he knows he can't fool us. Those of us with a brain, those of us that actually process what he's saying, those of us that are actually thinking. See, he knows he cannot fool educated folks. Those he can fool, though, are the cult that follows him. Those he can fool are those who do not understand the cultural impact that these statues and monuments have. So, of course, he's going to continue to pander towards them in any way, shape, or form. He's going to get them riled up. He knows that creating stiff, harsh jail sentences for this, it's not going to deter protesters. They're going to continue to do what they do. But what it's going to do is it's going to make him appear as strong. It's going to make him appear as mighty. He's going to, in the eyes of his cult and his supporters and the last bit of his remaining support, be viewed as a president who doesn't take any shit. They ignore the fact that he hid in a bunker while some of these very protests were happening outside the White House. But I digress. Donald Trump knows that the only way he can win 2020 is to unite the entire alt-right behind him. Because at this point, even moderate Republicans are considering going somewhere else and voting somewhere else because they cannot stand him as a leader. So he has to ensure that his support base is literally entirely composed of the last remaining people that can possibly support him, the alt-right. Now, I'm not saying that every Trump supporter is alt-right, okay? But what I'm saying is the majority of his support comes from the alt-right. So Donald Trump is going to do things that they want to see, that will get them fired up. Don't take down the Confederate flag. That's a part of our history. Don't take down that Confederate monument. That's a part of our history. Don't get pissed off that the fact that Mount Rushmore was stolen from, or the land that Mount Rushmore is on was stolen from the Lakota tribe. That's our history. Don't take down this statue to Andrew Jackson. That's our history. So he creates a executive order. He creates enforcement. He creates a way for the right to protest and the right to demand change and the right to object to a tyrannical person, Andrew Jackson. He creates a way that he can control that. His way of controlling it is by threatening jail sentences. Now, what do we do in the face of this? What do protesters do in the face of this very scary situation? Some will give up. Some will say, I cannot afford a 10-year jail sentence. But see, to bring about the change that you want, to bring about revolutionary change, to fix the narrative in this country, to fix the systemic racism, to fix all of the things going on in our country, some people will accept that jail is a risk worth taking. Some people will accept that 10 years in a federal penitentiary is worth it if it ends the systemic racism and begins the talks and begins to change things. Donald Trump is just trying to drum up support for his base, the last bit of it. What these people are doing that are demanding these statues come down, what these people are doing by saying, you want to teach history, put it in the history book and put it in a museum. They are trying to enact change. They're being revolutionary and they're being amazing. The narrative's shifting. We're seeing it all across the nation. We're seeing bands change their name to drop negative connotations. You are seeing sports begin to embrace things that they never embraced before. We're starting to see people who spoke out against Black Lives Matter begin to speak for Black Lives Matter, and we are seeing the topic being pushed in Congress, and it's beautiful. We can't be afraid in the face of a tyrant. We can't be afraid that a tyrant is going to put us down. We have to bring change. We have to fix this situation. And the only way to do it is to be brave. To the folks down in DC that are doing this, to the folks across this nation that are continuing this fight, be strong. We must remove these homages to the Confederacy. We must remove these homages to those who own slaves. We must remove these homages to the white domination of this nation. Those do not belong in places that are supposed to represent democracy and freedom. They don't belong in places where the public is going to view them and not learn from them. They don't belong in places where the KKK, neo-Nazis, and alt-right can use them as a backdrop to push their propaganda. It's time they come down. It's time they get removed. It's simple as that. So if we want to enact the change, then we must bring the change. And if we want to bring the change, then we must be a united voice for the change. Be a voice of liberty. Awaken the voice of liberty.